Dangers of Water Fluoridation by Jesse Wright. What is fluoride? Why is it in our drinking water? And whose idea was this? The chemical names for the fluoride in our drinking water are sodium fluoride, sodium silicofluoride, and fluorosilicate acid. Fluoride was first introduced to the public drinking water as an experiment. It was explained as a great medical innovation, considered to be safe, and promoted dental health. In 1957, Dr. Harold Hodge said on behalf of the government, quote, "Fluoridation is safe and causes no risk to the health," unquote. He also stated that the, quote, "ADA recommends smoking Viceroy cigarettes," unquote. Remember, you can trust them. They're working for big business, the government, and they're wearing lab coats. These fluoride compounds are found in the biohazard waste made from the creation process of fertilizers, steel, nuclear, and aluminum industries. These industrial plants collect the toxic compound in scrubbers. This is then sold to us as rat and cockroach poison, and also for water fluoridation. In 1939, Alcoa and the Dow Chemical Company transferred its technology to Germany. At the end of World War II, the U.S. government sent Elliot Perkins, a research worker in chemistry, biochemistry, physiology, and pathology, to take over the chemical plants in Germany. Perkins learned from the German scientists that they had devised a scheme during World War II using fluoride in the drinking water to easier control the masses of prisoners in the camps and the populations in the cities they had taken over. Keep in mind that the main ingredient in Prozac and Paxil is a fluoride compound. Fluoride causes irreversible damage to a part of the brain in neuron transmitters responsible for independent thought, thus making the person more docile and easier to control. When these companies were faced with the problem of how to dispose of the excessive amounts of toxic waste they were producing, also mounting lawsuits for environmental pollution, Alcoa, the Aluminum Company of America, the largest producers of fluoride at the time, hired Dr. Gerald J. Cox, an assistant director with the Mellon Institute of Industrial Research, to discover if fluoride could be beneficial. Dr. Cox ran a test for Alcoa. Using a pharmaceutical-grade fluoride, claimed that it helped prevent tooth decay in rats. Dr. Cox, with vested interests, presented his findings to his employer, Alcoa, then presented this to the government, who in turn started the fluoridation of our drinking water. Keep in mind, the FDA does not recognize fluoride as a drug, but the EPA and CDC recognize it as a poison. Over 22,000 people die each year due to fluoride poisoning. Most of these deaths are in infants, small children, and the elderly. The maximum safe amount of fluoride for adults can be found in 1 glass of tap water. It is recommended that we ingest 6 to 8 glasses of tap water daily. We do need water, but not the chemicals added to it.
One of the troubles with fluoride in this country is that we get a lot of it already before we get it from the water supply. The fluoride toothpaste is quite an important source because of the very concentrated fluoride in it. There's enough fluoride in a toothpaste tube of 60 grams to do serious damage to a child if it should choose to eat it all. Firstly, the problem is yet to come. We're only watching it building up now. Even in America, they're only just beginning to see the really crippling stages, and they are already admitting to serious degrees of fluorosis of the teeth, which after all is the shop window of the bones.
Quote, the NHANES survey found an overall dental fluorosis rate of 32% among U.S. children aged 6 to 19, unquote, Center for Disease Control.
One of the messages which I think is extraordinary in this whole issue is that the level of fluoride in mother's milk is so extremely low. It's 0.004 parts per million, which is 250 times less than we put in the drinking water.
Nature has devised a system for keeping fluoride away from the infant, and we're circumventing that by putting fluoride into drinking water. And I think there are consequences.
I think parents should know that fluoride is an extremely active chemical when it gets into our body. It can interfere with the pineal gland. It can interfere with the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland and the pineal gland are both intimately involved with brain development, mental development.
a real concern with young kids, especially with newborn infants, is that the blood-brain barrier is not fully developed at that point. And when children are drinking a formula made with fluoridated drinking water, they're getting a huge, an inappropriate dose of fluoride in the developing brain. This may be part of the reason, for instance, of the depression of IQ that we've seen in these Chinese studies.
As far as I can see, there is no doubt that the intake of fluoridated water is going to interrupt basic functions of nerve cells in the brain.
You do not want to create a fluoride exposure during a period of brain vulnerability.
Quote, in point of fact, fluoride causes more human cancer deaths and causes it faster than any other chemical, unquote. Dean Burke, former Chief Chemist Emeritus, U.S. National Cancer Institute.
Now, Dr. Burke, your research shows that if all of the United States had been fluoridated, it would mean about 70,000 extra deaths because of cancer per annum. Those are remarkable, impressive, and in fact rather disquieting figures. Could you shortly describe your research in this field and what results did you get from it?
Yes. The 70,000, of course, would represent 1/5 of all the cancer deaths in the United States, twice as many from breast cancer in women, and twice as many as from lung cancer in man. Our studies involved comparing the deaths of all persons in the 10 largest fluoridated cities of the United States with the 10 largest non-fluoridated cities in the United States year by year. And we obtained a very remarkable curve, which you can see here perhaps. Here is the fluoridated, and here is the non-fluoridated set of 10 cities each. Here's where the fluoridation started, and before this time, both sets of cities were identical. But no sooner had fluoridation started than this curve began to go up, the deaths began to increase, so that this effect occurs very promptly within 1, 2, or 5 years.
Now this, sir, is conclusive evidence that fluor kills because of cancer.
It is one of the most conclusive bits of scientific and biological evidence that I have come across in my 50 years in the field of cancer research.
Would this then, in your opinion, be the end of fluor in water, in drinking water?
It should be the end, and in the United States, it should so be the end by federal law known as the Delaney Amendment, which says that anything found to induce cancer in man or animals cannot be legally put into the food or drink of man or animals. And so, and this is all less than 1 year old, so that it entirely changes any previous ideas of fluoridation that anyone may have had, because this is the first real indication of an important effect.
Now
this, you see, amounts to public murder on a grand scale. It is a public crime, it would be, to put fluoride in the drinking water of people.
There is, of course, you talk about murder, sir, an ethical aspect to all this, a law aspect, an aspect of people's inhumanity to people. What is your idea about how should this be implemented in our society? The ethical aspects of administering poison, as it were, to people.
Well, I think this aspect, this murder aspect, clearly indicates a very strong unethical aspect to forcing people to kill themselves.
Quote, we would not purposefully add arsenic to the water supply. We would not purposefully add lead. The fact is that fluoride is more toxic than lead and just slightly less toxic than arsenic, unquote. Dr. John Yamayani. You cannot avoid the fluoride completely, but you can limit the amount you ingest. Your city tests the municipal water supply at least once per year. Request a copy and review it. And there are several types of water filters you can install in your home. Write or call your city. Attend city meetings. You can make a difference. Let your voice be heard, and possibly your city will see the light and stop fluoridating your water. We are one of the few countries who still practice this form of forced medication. This is what big business and a corrupt government will do, and if you let them, it will only get worse. Search the web and investigate for yourself. You decide. Do you trust fluoridation?